called gentrification. It's what happens when the property value of a certain area is brought down. Huh? You listening? To bring the property value down. They can buy the land at a lower price. Then they move all the people out, raise the property value, and sell it at a profit.
I'm just a boy from the hood. I feel like furious styles. Gentrification in our ghetto. This nation is ours. We built this shit. Yeah, we built this shit. I'm just a boy from the hood. I feel like furious styles. Gentrification in our ghetto. This nation is ours. We built this shit. Yeah, we built this shit.
Why don't y'all take a look at that sign up there? See what it says? Cash for your home. You know what that is?
Billboard.
What are y'all, Amos and Andy? Are you stepping and he's fetching? I'm talking about the message, what it stands for. It's called gentrification. It's what happens when the property value of a certain area is brought down. Huh? You listening?
Yeah.
To bring the property value down. They can buy the land at a lower price. Then they move all the people out, raise the property value, and sell it at a profit. Now what we need to do is we need to keep everything in our neighborhood, everything, black. Black owned with black money. Just like the Jews, the Italians, the Mexicans, and the Koreans do.
Ain't nobody from outside bringing down the property value. It's these folk shooting each other and selling that crack rock and shit.
Well, how you think the crack rock gets into the country? We don't own any planes. We don't own no ships. But we are not the people who are flying and floating that shit in here. I know every time you turn on the TV, that's what you see. Black people selling the rock, pushing the rock, pushing the rock. Yeah, I know. But that wasn't a problem as long as it was here. Wasn't a problem until it was in Iowa and it showed up on Wall Street where there are hardly any black people. Now, if you want to talk about guns, why is it that there's a gun shop on almost every corner in this community?
Why?
Tell you why. For the same reason that there's a liquor store on almost every corner in the black community. Why? They want us to kill ourselves. You go out to Beverly Hills, you don't see that shit. But they want us to kill ourselves. Yeah, the best way you can destroy a people, you take away their ability to reproduce themselves.
Yeah.
Who is it that's dying out here on these streets every night? Y'all.
Yeah.
Young brothers like yourselves.
What am I supposed to do? Fool roll up, try to smoke me? I'm gonna shoot the motherfucker if he don't kill me first.
You're doing exactly what they want you to do. You have to think, young brother, about your future.
A boy last week, who was 16 in San Francisco, told me on television. Thank God we got him to talk. Maybe somebody will start to listen. He said, I got no country, I've got no flag. Now he's only 16 years old. And I couldn't say you do. I don't have any evidence to prove that he does. They were tearing down his house because San Francisco is engaging, as most northern cities now are engaged, in something called urban renewal, which means moving the Negroes out. It means Negro removal. That is what it means. And the federal government is an accomplice to this fact. Now we're talking about human beings. There's not such a thing as a monolithic wall or some abstraction called the Negro problem. These are Negro boys and girls who at 16 and 17 don't believe the country means anything that it says and don't feel they have any place here on the basis of the performance of the entire country.
But now, Jim...
No, am I exaggerating?
No, I certainly could not say that you're exaggerating.
They taking over all of this shit around our neighborhoods just so they can move the fuck in.
2-year-old who's been living on DC's H Street his entire life.
These people decided to have the audacity to build a trolley right here when X2 is working just fine. X2 been booming since I've been alive, since probably before that. They gonna have all this money to invest in the trolley right here instead of fixing all these potholes in the ground. What is it? Gentrification? Gentrification?
Big ass word.
They make all of these condominiums and all of these random stores and stuff getting built around our neighborhoods, right? And then probably months or a year or so down the line, they get to working their way inside. Now they telling us what we can and cannot do in our own neighborhood. Otherwise, we gonna have a 30-day eviction notice.
On this same exact street. Same street. I mean, like, you know what that mean right there, right? That's the dope spot. You see them little, what they call them? Sneakers that be hanging? There they go. You see them sneakers? You know what that mean. You from the hood, you know what that mean. Same street. I gotta show you this. Same street. Now, you see that? Now, these these folks ain't playing with y'all. It say, if you can't read it, it say 27 lots. Starting 600,000. 27. 27 lots, 600,000. Do the math on that. That's starting at. That's like 16 million. This white man over here about to do 16 million, starting at 600. So that's not counting the ones that got the view that's gonna go for 800,000. They getting ready to do 20 million. 20. And let me just turn around so you can see what's going on. We across the street looking at this go up. Now that's the part that baffles me. We across the street watching this go down. And it can't be like that's one multiplex, that's two multiplexes, three multiplexes, four multiplexes. And these folks got the earth digging equipment, they got the cats out here. They not playing with y'all, man. They not playing with y'all. So to be on some foolishness right now as black folks, I ain't even pleading with y'all no more. I'm just showing you what this white man is doing. He's pushing you out of your own community, man. And we can't even bathe or clean ourselves, man. We've allowed for these drugs and all this other stuff, our condition as a people, to affect us to a point where directly across the street we can't even respond to an action like this. That's unbelievable to me, man. Like I cannot comprehend that. I know we got stuff going on in Puerto Rico. You know, they got relief efforts going on. I know we got stuff going on in Houston, but I'm talking about right here in our own community, we got stuff going on. There's a hurricane in our own community, man. You know what I'm saying? And ain't nobody doing nothing about this, man. This is unreal to me, man. It's just so unbelievable, man. So I'm just asking y'all, man, you know, you got to do something, man. As if you're not moving on this land ownership, man, in 5 years, there will be no black people in downtown Atlanta. It ain't gonna happen. They're not building this for you.
Losing our ghetto, but we don't even know it. Only use the curb for the liquor we pawn. Nigga got shot, now it's time to mourn. Is what it is, baby, like move on. Got a little struggle cause it made me strong. Whole Foods in the hood, now the rent got raised. But I'm still living off minimum wage. Nigga can't even afford to stay. Next thing you know, they gon' own the block. Shit too high for the mom and pop. Stoves we was raised on the block. Now we gotta make way for a coffee shop. Can't take shit, so they buy the land. Living next door to the fireman. And a couple with a dog, but they don't even speak. Walk around acting like they better than me. Cause they make 6 figures with a college degree. I grew up around here, these ain't apartments to me. Steady jacking up the price, but you got
this gentrification thing is going on. And y'all sitting back watching this, right? We got property all around this belt line. I've only been investing in the belt line because that's what Vesta Holdings is investing. And they taking everybody's property, right? Black folks that live in the hood, vis-a-vis the West End, English Avenue, Munson, Rockmart, Bernard Street, MLK, all of that, you know what I'm talking about. Simpson Road, Rick Film down there. Don't sell them properties. These people are coming, they got Bouviers and Mastiffs, they walk in at 3 o'clock in the morning. Nobody walks no Bouvier and Mastiff on Simpson Road and MLK, you serious? They'll blow your head off. But these folks are running around, yitty, 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 walking their doors. So do you know what that means? This is from my experience in real estate, and I'm not a master. But I know white folks increase the value of the neighborhood, period. I'm sorry if I'm making you feel uncomfortable, that's a business play. You see white folks moving in your neighborhood, you don't sell. Period. They don't have no problems moving next to you because they know when they move in there and they call the police, Day and John that's pumping on the corner, they got limited time. Because one thing that white folks understand is that they are landlords. They are the lord of the land. They don't have no problems calling narcotics and moving your black behind out of here. Why do y'all not invest in your own land and these people are muscling you out? I don't understand that. So if we want to really do something, this is a great panel. I'm very happy at the fact that we're creating this conversation. But the real deal is, buy your own neighborhoods back. Del Zeno talking about buy back your black. You know what I'm saying, with this gentrification thing, because they're doing it everywhere. They're doing it in Detroit, they're doing it in Chicago, they're doing it in Seattle, Washington, they're doing it in Portland, they just left New York City, they're doing it in Brooklyn. In Brooklyn! Come on, man, who does this? And we just sit back, okay, Mr. Anderson, I don't know, I ain't got no money. Find the money! Y'all got money to buy red bottoms, y'all got money to buy all this insidious, stupid stuff, and I say this in closing. This fool, I went into the Citgo gas station because I own these properties on Honeysuckle, 1930 Honeysuckle Lanes, the first property I ever bought. Went to the Citgo gas station to get some gas. This fool had gold, so much gold in his mouth, and then I'm looking in his mouth. Hey, shouted, let me get the 456 straight box, let me get the 789 straight box, 875 straight box, and 987 straight box. Shouted, yeah, right there. Let me get the Swisher Sweet, and they got the the watermelon Swisher right there, shout. The entire grill, Munson, from here to here, caps. So that means he had an ounce. A cap is about an ounce of gold. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 on the top, 10 on the bottom. Jewel, how much is the gold traded for right now? 12?
About 1082.
1082. An ounce. This fool got 20 in his mouth. Talking about give me a Swisher Sweet, shouted. What's up, folks? On Campbellton Road. And Tyler Perry just bought Fort McPherson. And y'all just sitting here looking crazy. Like, what's up, folks? What's up, my nigga? What it is, dog? No, it's not about that.
What I want to talk to you about when we talk about serial forced displacement is any action that serves as a coercive force that causes the displacement of a particular group, a particular race, particular culture from a particular spatial environment. And so basically what we're dealing with, since we're talking about the black community, is any action that disrupts the normal environment and displaces a group of people from a particular area, or in certain instances locks them in within a particular area. Locks them in a particular area. So basically what we're looking at here when we talk about gentrification is two different types of displacement. I want to talk about that first, and then we're going to move into some real quick understanding of how we are where we are and why and what we need to do about it. First and foremost, you have two types of displacement. You have direct displacement and you have what's known as exclusionary displacement. In direct displacement are situations in which forces come in, whether it's developers, whether it's investors, whatever, comes into a black community and begins to buy property, begins to invest in that property. And that's what gentrification basically is. It is the process of first de-investing in a particular community, allowing that community to decay through de-investment, de-industrialization, and a number of different things that happen, and allow it to decay, become devalued, depreciate in value, and become blighted, basically. Then come back in and reinvest in the de-invested at a very, very, very low rate, pennies on the dollar, and then begin to build that property up in a way that raises the property value.
It's called gentrification. It's what happens when the property value of a certain area is brought down. Huh? You listening?
Yeah.
They bring the property value down. They can buy the land at a lower price. Then they move all the people out, raise the property value, and sell it at a profit. Now what we need to do is we need to keep everything in our neighborhood, everything, black. Black owned with black money. Just like the Jews, the Italians, the Mexicans, and the Koreans do?
But creates rent and living costs that are excessive to the point, or exorbitant to the point that it extends beyond what the people who live there currently are able to afford. So it begins to move them out, and those who aren't moved out are part of the second type of displacement. Now, normally what happens in a situation where gentrification creates forced displacement is the one group of people who are of a certain group. At this point in time, we're talking about impoverished blacks. One particular way that they don't end up getting moved is when there's public housing in place. Because of public housing that's owned by the government, that's funded by the government, and is supported, so that's not going to be moved because that's not going to be sold, that's not going to be bought. And so it'll stay. But this is what happens. Those who stay in their homes and those who remain in public housing are a part of what's known as exclusionary displacement. What does that mean? You stayed behind, but now you're becoming a part of a community that you no longer recognize. You're becoming a part of a community in which they're erecting strip centers, they're erecting malls, they're erecting all these different high-end stores and high-end high-rise apartments, all these things that you can't afford. So now you're in an environment where the best you can do is walk around and window shop in an environment where you no longer feel comfortable. And so what'll happen is eventually you'll leave. And so, but in the meantime, you're a part of what's known as exclusionary displacement. You're still there, but you're isolated. You're not a part of the change. You're not a part of the rejuvenation process. And so those are the two different types. Now, the first thing I'm going to tell you is, in order to truly get an understanding of gentrification and what it means, you really need to do research on your own. The one thing that you cannot do when you're trying to understand where we are as a people is to get your information from mainstream media. Mainstream media is a mind control machine. In other words, not just when it comes to blacks, but you'll find that if you read certain newspapers, or if you look at certain reports, you'll find out that one story is being told one way in one geographic location, and the same story is being reported and told another way in another geographic location, because the message and the image that they're trying to portray in the different areas has different purposes. So what you have to be able to understand is that these messages are specifically meant to control how people perceive what's going on and how they will approach it. So when gentrification is reported from mainstream media, it's normally reported as a revitalization process, but there's a huge difference between revitalization and reinvestment with the purpose of gentrification. Revitalization is normally a process that is funded both by private dollars and by public dollars, but it is meant to revitalize, to increase to improve living environments, to increase safety in the community, to provide a better state of living, but it is to also protect the current culture. So it's not to displace the people in the community, it's to provide a better living environment for the people in the community, a improved property value, all those things that you get in gentrification, with the exception of displacement. So revitalization is different than gentrification, but most of the time gentrification is often reported as a revitalization project in a certain community. But the revitalization, when it comes in and drives up property values beyond that which can be afforded by the residents that are in the area, creates displacement. Now, we have been experiencing displacement, forced displacement, for years. That's why we call it serial forced displacement, and the negative impacts psychologically, even in the area of physical illness, mental illness, socioeconomic mobility, and a number of other different ways, comes from these different situations or incidents of serial forced displacement. One of the first that you can see is redlining, which is something that happened back in the late 20s to early 30s. Redlining was a policy in which communities would receive funding from banks based on grading systems that had colors: green, blue, whatever. Red was obviously an F rating, meaning that it was a low rating, and meaning that people in that particular area would not get funding. And one of the primary influences on whether an area would be considered a red area or a red-lined area would be whether or not black families lived in the area. Simply having one black family in a particular community could literally provide an F rating, which is a red line, meaning that families in that community could no longer get loans, could no longer get renovation loans for their homes, get business loans, and a number of other different things that they would probably normally expect under normal conditions. So this created hostility that may not have existed between whites and blacks, because whites understood and other non-blacks understood if we have blacks in our community, it immediately brings about with it financial strain, financial difficulty, and the lack of access to the necessary funding to make sure that we can continuously build our community. So we don't want blacks in our community. So that immediately started to create these walls that push blacks outside of certain communities, disallow blacks to own property in certain areas simply because of the redlining rule. After redlining came urban renewal. Urban renewal is the predecessor to gentrification. Urban renewal was a way to sit up and say, okay, when you come in with urban renewal, what that meant is we would use things like benign neglect, which is to withdraw services and funding and support from government and private sector organizations to make sure that low-income communities would be able to continuously keep up the community, take care of their homes, do all the things that's necessary. Withdraw those, and immediately the community will begin to decline in appearance, decline in value, all of these things. And once it becomes blighted, then urban renewal allowed for the law to come in and actually take property, clear the property off, tear the house down, clear the property off of all private possessions, and then sell the land at a discounted price, allowing others to come in and build on the property. Real similar to gentrification, except it was mandated through government policy. And then you move from that now to using benign neglect to create a situation in which gentrification takes place. So you're looking at all of these different things. And while we're sitting up and we're talking about gentrification, it's extremely important to know that anytime that I'm talking to you, anytime that I'm sharing with you, anytime we're dealing with one of the issues of that the African American community is facing, it's extremely important to understand that I'm not presenting this from the position of a victim. So while we're talking about what they are doing, we always have to go back and talk about why it's possible, why they're able to do it, and then what are we going to do about it? Because we are always in a position where we can do something. We're never in a position where we are stuck and we're at the mercy of someone without being able to take action. Now, what we do is the longer we go without taking action, the deeper we get into a hole, and the harder we have to fight to get out of that hole, and the less influence we have initially in making a move to get out of that situation. So yes, we're talking about a situation in which deindustrialization, meaning that industrial jobs that used to be in the city in near black communities. I mean, Detroit is a primary example of what happens when you deindustrialize an entire city that's heavily highly populated by black people, and then take away the jobs that gave those black people life and move those jobs to other countries, move those jobs to other rural areas, places in which blacks don't reside, and now you take away the jobs. Okay, here's what happens in these deindustrialized, deinvested areas when they stop investing in the community, because we have given up ownership in so many different ways, because we invested more in the idea of social equality, being able to eat in the same restaurants as white, being able to go to the same movie theater as whites. And since we were so invested in social equality and social integration, we began to lose sight of the value of ownership. See, the whole thing, when you're talking about capitalism in the most simplest form is the ownership of property, the ownership of resources, the ownership of tools, using that ownership and control along with leveraging the labor of others to create wealth. And so you need ownership of property, ownership of resources, and ownership of the tools to create and manufacture
products, create and manufacture services, and provide those services that meet the needs of people. And when you're able to do that and leverage what you're doing with the labor of others, meaning that you can pay other people to get it done at a more rapid pace than you can possibly do it yourself, you are now generating wealth based on that, and that's capitalism. Now, being the fact that we don't own anything, we've actually gone backwards in that area. Back in the 50s and 60s, it's approximated that roughly 65% of black people own their own business at some level, at some way, whether you were a seamstress, whether you were a hair salon owner, whether you owned your own lawn service, whatever it was, own dry cleaners, you owned your own business. And we owned it at a rate of 65% of our population had our own business. We had our own movie theaters, our own cab companies, our own bus companies, our own grocery stores. We had a literal economic infrastructure that we could actually have built upon while we were fighting for social equality. We should have been building on what we already had, establishing more and more independence so that we would not have to turn to the government to provide support and protection for us. The moment that we started receiving subsidies from the government, we immediately placed ourselves at the mercy of those who control the government. And because of that, there's only so much that we can do. It's real hard to talk about revolution, talk about standing up and building and black pride and all that stuff when you've got to wait on a check that comes from the very government that you're talking about moving against. You got to wait on that to feed your family. You got to wait on all of this. You got to go to a job that's owned by a white man and do what that white man needs you to do and get paid what that white man wants to pay you. And I'm using very general and broad terms with white man. It could be a white-owned corporation, a predominantly white-owned corporation owned by a white female. It's all the same from where I'm coming from. It's not black-owned. It's not black-controlled. In other words, we've placed ourselves collectively at the mercy of the very ones we are claiming are oppressing us. Nowhere in any way, in any logical reason, does that make sense. But it's that very thing that has placed us in a situation now where serial forced displacement has pushed us in a position where we are now being dispersed. And it has so many different implications. Go to the site, go to the Odyssey Project site. The link is on here. Go to the Odyssey Project site and get to a page where it allows you to search for serial forced displacement. There's an article I wrote over a year ago, maybe 2 years ago, on serial forced displacement. And it explains how it impacts us socioeconomically, how it impacts us mentally and psychologically, how it impacts our physical health, how it has actually impacted in the spread of certain diseases. It's so many different ways that this impacts us. And the thing is, they know about it. We don't know. We don't pay attention. We don't invest in ourselves. We don't do our research. We don't prepare ourselves to take action. What we should be doing right now is actually coming up with consortiums within each community that will develop and build and invest in the community. We should be now lobbying black businesses to come to the black community. Even if you don't want to move the entire business, you should set up a new store in a black neighborhood to service the black need. You should also be looking to start new businesses. So we should also have be lobbying those blacks who have the potential to invest in opening new businesses. Even if they don't want to open the business, they should be looking to invest in other people who have the skill set, the passion, and the commitment to opening a business. They should be willing to invest in that. In other words, to create ownership. You cannot compete in this. You cannot stop gentrification without ownership. You cannot stop the encroachment of new developments and coming in. And the thing is, when these new developers and these revitalization projects, which are really renovation projects that are meant for the infiltration of non-blacks, predominantly whites, to move in, more upscale, more financially affluent people to move into that area. What happened is when we fought for integration, and it meant that we could live and move and stay wherever we wanted to stay, that started to push the white population, the more affluent population, out towards rural areas. So we started to see the development of suburban areas. Well, what's happening now is, as we're moving out into the suburbs, chasing them
instead of developing our own enclaves and remaining within our process. In other words, when one of us experiences a certain level of success, instead of finding a way to reinvest in building the community, we immediately make a run for the gated community where the predominantly white is. And what happens is with that is we now disperse our power economically. Because now when I move into a gated community, I've experienced this. When I move into a gated community, my tax dollars do not go towards a situation that's going to fund anything that's beneficial to blacks in a collective manner. It's going to go into a situation where the predominantly white schools are going to be funded. Other projects, road projects and other projects that will be funded by my tax dollar or that I pay on my property is going to go to things that benefit predominantly non-black people. But what happens is when we keep our money, when we start to become successful, when we keep our money in a black enclave, that money goes into the redevelopment of that enclave, to the growth of that enclave, to the creation of opportunities for the people within that enclave, so that everybody has an opportunity to start stepping out on the platform of ownership and being able to now create, to compete in a capitalist society. We are trying to sit up and function as workers in a capitalist society. You cannot develop and build wealth as an employee in a capitalist society. Remember, capitalism functions off of ownership of resources, land, property, and tools, and then the use of labor for the purpose of enrichment. In other words, you have to have control of different situations, and you have to be the one that's creating the business. You have to be the one that's leveraging labor. You have to be the one that's sitting up, coming up with the idea, creating the opportunity, and meeting the needs. That's what business is. Business is seeing a need that is not being met, or that is being met but not being adequately and sufficiently met, creating a business and an opportunity that meets that need at a level and at a quality that is not being met, and you now have automatically placed yourself in a position of competitiveness. Now you have to maintain by providing the service you promised to provide, providing the experience you promised to provide, and then building on that. And the way that you perpetuate that is by taking a certain amount of the profits and the proceeds that's created through this new endeavor and investing. If you're not going to open a business, another business yourself, investing in someone else who looks like you, who has the same passion and purpose and skin color as you, and invest in them so that they can also build, they can also lift themselves out, and they understand now that someone sold into them, they have to go out and invest and so into someone else. You're building a community, something that we do not have in this country right now. We have a bunch of black neighborhoods, no community. See, a community has a financial infrastructure, has a financial agenda, has a code of conduct and behavior, has a specific way of functioning and operating, has the capacity to independently operate for the most part. Now we have to understand we don't control any water systems and any filtration systems, but we have the capacity to do that. There's a brother Willie Hawkins that talks about this all the time. We can always scale up the things that he has to create our own filtration systems, our own water systems. Now we're talking about operating an operation and taking on a mindset that will automatically be hostile to the wealthy elite, because they need us to remain in the position of being a permanent underclass, someone that is constantly begging for them, creating our way of life through crime and begging them for a handout. They need that because that solidifies and provides the security that allows them to remain in their position of elitism. So what we have to do is understand that we've got to isolate ourselves. We've got to build in a manner that isolates ourselves. We've got to develop alliances with people outside of the scope of our geographical and spatial locations. What I'm trying to get us to understand is that if we don't take the necessary steps and the necessary actions, we will continually be dispersed. Another thing that happens when you disperse a group of people, when you disperse a group of people, when you move into a community and you disperse that community, look at Harlem. Primary example, Harlem doesn't resemble Harlem, and it doesn't belong to the African culture and the Spanish culture that used to dominate Harlem. Now it's becoming an upscale place. The brownstones in Harlem are being renovated, and they're $1 million acquisitions now. All of these different things, the prices are going up to where the average person in Harlem can no longer afford it, and they're being forced out. Now what happens is when these people are forced out, there's not this particular spot where they are going to set up again. In other words, when you move them out, there's not this one spot, one community that's set up for all the displaced where they're going and then gathering themselves and refocusing and creating their strategy and trying again. When you disperse, this group, this family goes over here, that family goes over there, and so you're dispersing your political power that you have when you're functioning from an enclave in one block. You're dispersing that. You're dispersing your ability to function socioeconomically within a certain sphere and create that financial and socioeconomic fluidity and mobility that's necessary to grow, to thrive, to create your own educational processes and educational systems. All those things that you have now are floating out, and because now you're living in an environment where it's now multicultural, you got Hispanics, you got blacks, you got poor whites, you got all these people and all these different agendas. Now it's hard to represent your agenda specifically because everybody's fighting for their own thing. So now you're out there, you're an individual person standing on your own, acting on your own, and you're functioning on your own. There's no collective power. So when we allow them to come into the community and actually gentrify it, we're creating a situation where we're becoming less and less and less influential and powerful in being able to exact change in the current circumstances in which we live. So what we have to do is understand first and foremost what capitalism is, how you function in capitalism. When you understand capitalism, you will become a whole lot less worried about who's in the presidential office and more worried about what you can create that will allow you to step out into the world and compete. See, it doesn't matter. What you find out, those who understand money, those who understand building wealth, those who understand business, doesn't matter whether the economy is up and down, they're still making money. Why? Because they understand money and they understand that money is always there to be made no matter how the economy is going. You simply adjust the way you move. You simply adjust the way you invest. You simply adjust how you function in any particular situation. You have to know what's happening and be willing to invest enough to understand how to predict, anticipate movement in the financial sector, movement in the residential sector, movement in real estate, movement in banking, movement on the stock market. All of those things are going to be indicative of what move you make next. But we have the capacity to do that. We've got to stop looking at political figures. We've got to stop looking at these leaders who are buffers, who don't want to talk about real change, don't want to empower you with real change, don't want to implant the seed of change, just simply want to create a buffer that will calm you down, make you more comfortable with what's happening to you, then to actually excite change. You're going to have to determine within yourselves to come up in your community, to care enough about what's going on in your community, to care enough about stopping the violence in your community, to care enough about educating the youth in your community holistically on your own, to care enough about rebuilding, revitalizing, and redeveloping your own community, creating some place that's people desire to live, creating some place that our people can look at and have pride in and protect and cover. Those are the things that we have the power to do. Right now, we're our own worst enemy because we're sitting around in a situation expecting someone to give us something. And that's not what's going to happen. We're going to have to create our own opportunities. We're going to have to stand up and do something about where we're at. That's what we're going to have to do. This continuous forced displacement is taking its toll. And at a certain point, we're going to be so dispersed, so diluted as a people, so spread out that we literally have no political presence, period. Where politicians won't even come to us and seek our vote anymore because it won't matter. That's what we're going to have to do. So I hope that I've dropped something on you. I hope that it's something that has touched you. I hope that you have found a starting point. You know, I don't know if we'll get a chance to talk about gentrification on this coming talk, this roundtable discussion we're having this weekend, but I do hope that we are going to touch on it because this is going to be a series of discussions, and we're talking about the missing black man and the influence it's having on the black collective and the black community this Saturday. But we're going to be talking about all of these different situations and issues that we are facing that we must find a way to deal with. We can't look on the outside. We can't keep pointing the finger. We have to be able to realize, yes, this is what racism is doing. This is what institutional racism is doing. This is what the pressure of institutional racism is. This is the type of pressure that's being applied to us. And then we have to decide, okay, what are we going to do about it? Because we cannot depend on anyone externally to provide us with relief. That's not going to happen. We need to let that go. We need to start to develop our own media outlets, develop our own educational processes, and what we got to understand is this is a step-by-step process that's going to take time because of where we're starting from. But you got to take the first step. You got to get out. We've got to learn to stand together. We've got to stop fighting one another. We've got to start looking at, we take more pride in being able to attack and put one another in quote unquote in our places than we do of standing up to a system that's totally dismantling us, destroyed our families, destroyed our communities, basically completely devastating the black male population. And we're sitting around and just looking and then attacking one another. We make it easier. We're the enemy within that African proverb is speaking of when it says, if there's no enemy on the inside, the enemy on the outside can do us no harm. We're going to have to deal with the enemy on the inside. Once we deal with the enemy on the inside, we isolate ourselves, strengthen ourselves, make ourselves more oblivious to the assaults and the attacks of institutional racism because we're not dependent on the system. The less dependent we become on the system, the more power we have to operate and actually impact the system. It's that simple. Well, that's it for now. I hope that I've left you with something that you can stand on. I hope I've left you with something that you can take and work with, but we're going to have to be able to take action. What I do know is we're going to be live streaming this roundtable discussion on Saturday between 9 and 12 on a number of different media channels. If you don't know which media channel is probably best for you, I would suggest contacting Scott Porter. I know that you can reach him because he's tagged in on this, so you should be able to find his name, click on it, touch bases with him. He's the one hosting this event on this Saturday. I'll be participating. Brother Quinan Brooker will be participating, and it'll be one other gentleman that's going to be in there. We're going to go after this. We're going to talk about it from a number of different angles. We're going to address it. We're going to talk about what's necessary and what we need to do as black men to immediately start to implement change and bring about change within the black community. If we're going to operate as a collective, this is where it starts. If we're going to continue to function on an individual mindset where nobody's worried about anybody but themselves, all we got to do is keep doing what we're doing and hope nothing happens to us.
Cheap. Motherfuckers ain't fooling me. I love my skin and I love my soul. We was all slaves, was the lie they told. We started out kings with diamonds and gold, but they took our shit, baby, ain't that cold? I'm just a boy from the hood, I feel like Furious Styles. Gentrification in our ghetto, this thing.
You are intelligent enough to manipulate this system in your favor, and it all starts with your dollar. Your dollar could get you quicker to liberation than all the mentality and all the malice thoughts and all the thoughts of righteous anger. Your dollar could get you there quicker if you simply organized your dollar. There's enough dollars in this room to begin to buy this neighborhood, to fortify the west side. And if you're from Atlanta, you don't want it to become Kirkwood. Well, my grandmother owns a house that now taxes are trying to push her out of, but she gonna be okay. Is your grandmama gonna be okay? Because her grandson sing and dance for a living. You get what I'm saying? Like, I'm just simply saying, look at where we really at. I talked to Dick Gregory, me and T.I. was on the phone with him. Dick cussed us out for an hour. We said, what can we do? Dick, he said, nigga, what can y'all do? He said, you can't do nothing but keep making responsible decisions and try to educate other black people to do the same. We are only as strong as the ties that bind us, and we can't only be together in matters of church and political rhetoric.
Right on.
So this tax season, I'm gonna shut up. This tax season, what I'm going to challenge black people in Atlanta to do is to take your petty money, put it together, and buy a piece of land. Buy something. I have a barbershop on Edgewood Avenue right now. I wish I could have bought the building because I'm a renter. I talked to a black man who owns a grocery, and we talked about gentrification, and he said, you know what? These niggas will never tell you, but it's our fault. And I said, gentrification's our fault. Hold on now. That's against the narrative, brother, of what me and Banner been talking about. That's what he told me, Banner. He said the children of the people that bought these buildings thought that they weren't good enough. The children of the people that used to own parts of this city that are sold out thought, I'm a doctor, I'm a lawyer, I have a good job, I don't need to own my dad's side corner store. Now your dad's side corner store is worth $250,000 and $500,000, soon to be $1 million, and you're gonna be driving by talking about what you wish you had. And I'm gonna tell y'all, I'm not no nigga giving you no advice. I just bought a building in Savannah. Listen to what I'm telling you. Take the lessons you've learned here. If it's too late for Atlanta, what about Macon? What about Savannah? What about Chattanooga? What about Birmingham? How many people have opened up black bank accounts yet? Oh, I again say, see why we talking revolutionary? We don't take over the world, nigga. You ain't even got a bank. You got a black bank that's been successful for 95 years in this city, worth $400 million. Our goal should be $1 billion bank. That way they can buy the other banks, and you have a real lender, a real institution that cares about you. So what all I'm saying is, use your mind, black people. Use your mind. Like my grandmother used to say, boy, use what God gave you. God gave you more than fists, and more than fighting, and more than anger. God gave you a beautiful mind, a righteous mind, and if you only bond together, you won't have to fight. You can be quiet on them. Oh, that's when it's bad, when you be quiet on them.
I'm just a boy from the hood, I feel like Furious Styles. Gentrification in our ghetto, this nation is ours. We built this shit. Yeah, we built this shit. I'm just a boy from the hood, I feel like Furious Styles. Gentrification in our ghetto, this nation is ours. We built this shit. Yeah, we built this shit. Where we gon' live if it ain't the hood? Can't move up cause a nigga po. Still in the recession and the jaws is low. Only other option is slang some blow. 3-strike rule, better think again. Kicking us out and they moving in. Pushing us all to the side of the city. Full of liquor stores in the water, shitty. School fucked up, they don't teach the kids about who they is or what we did. Aliens and build them pyramids. We the ones started the beauty supply. People bought it out, now prices high. Everything around me gentrified. Better wake up, nigga, open your eyes. Go and get high, then you eat pie pies. But it ain't uptown, only on our side. Cross their finger cause they hope we die. Musta forgot we was born to survive. Only in the hood when you need a vote. Or fucking our women in exchange for dope. Same old shit, it ain't changing though. Got me feeling like God my only hope. Leave him alone.
Oh. What you gonna do, Tom? Oh yeah, it's on there. Go get 'em, boss. You bitch about to get it, then. Get 'em, buddy. Come on. What the hell you say, nigger?
Fuck you.
God damn it! Don't you ever talk back to me again! You tell him, Tom, with that boy! Shut the fuck up, Jason! God damn it! Don't you sass me! I'm telling you, no more sass! God damn you! Damn you! Yeah, shut up! Yeah.
Pussy!
We can be more. We're so much greater than this. But you can't see?
They're using us for their own gain, their money, their power. And what do we get? Huh? We can't let fear control our circumstance. If we stay here like we are, we'll die here. You can control this and this.
Liberate your mind. You can see a whole new world. A world only you can control.
Hey! You know we ain't ready.
Ain't nobody ever ready. You just gotta do it.
Get up, get up. You gotta see this dude. Your boy's getting his ass whipped right now. Get your ass up. Come on. I hope you learn a lesson, damn it.
How's that feel, damn it?
I'm feeling like God, my only hope. I'm just a boy from the hood. I feel like furious styles. Gentrification in our ghetto. This nation is ours. We built this shit. Yeah, we built this shit. I'm just a boy from the hood. I feel like furious styles. Gentrification in our ghetto. This nation is ours. We built this shit. Yeah, we built this shit.
We are African, and we happen to be in America. We're not American. We are people who formerly were Africans who were kidnapped and brought to America. We didn't land on Plymouth Rock. The rock was landed on us.